It is then the event 76 years ago that is right at the core of the Palestinian national struggle. A day of high tension in the Middle East as the Palestinian people today mark the Nakba, Arabic for catastrophe, the day when some 700,000 Palestinians fled or were driven from their homes following the establishment of Israel. For many, a painful moment that many others could say could pale in comparison to what is now unfolding in Gaza.
We lived through the Nakba not just once, we were displaced several times. Palestinian exile, we lived through it not just once but several times. In 2014 we were displaced, in 2008 we were displaced, in 2022 we were displaced. I was a child in 1967 as well, and the circumstances were very difficult.
Well, let's cross then to Jerusalem. We're going to talk to our correspondent, Irris Makler, who joins us now. Irris, as we heard there, I mean, it is for many a very painful day, isn't it?
It is a painful day. It's always a painful day. And we've now seen the beginning of marchers across the West Bank. They usually continue. They often end in clashes as well. So we're seeing that as Palestinians mark the Nakba, the catastrophe that was the creation of the State of Israel, but their dispossession. It's quite interesting because these two events, the Israelis marking the creation of their state, Palestinians marking their dispossession in 1948, the shadow of the events of today are hanging over both of these events. So you can see a very muted celebration in Israel over the past 24 hours, a very muted Memorial Day the day before that, and, you know, the reality of an ongoing war, the longest that Israel has fought since 1948, since that war that these people are marching today to commemorate and to mark what it means to still have that refugee mindset for Palestinians and still feel the pain of that dispossession so many years, 76 years after it happened. I mean, for many of these Palestinians, most of them, I would say, are born after the Nakba, but it lives for them as the defining story of the defining narrative of being Palestinian.
Irris, it comes, of course, as Israel is pushing further and further into Gaza as well, doesn't it?
Yes, that's right. We have heard from the Israeli Defense Force spokesperson who was talking to journalists and said this is a limited military action. Nevertheless, at the same time, we see that there are more tanks coming to the east of Rafah, that's the city in the south that borders on the border between Gaza and Egypt. We have reports of now more than 500,000 people who have left Rafah. They are not indigenous Rafah, citizens of Rafah. They are something like, there was about 300,000 people who lived in Rafah, now about 1 million who have joined fleeing the wars in the north. They're now there in the south and they're now moving again. So that's what we see. We have reports. I just saw a report from one of the hospitals in Rafah saying they've run out of fuel. That means no electricity. They run their hospital on generators, their power on generators, no electricity for them. So it's a reprise, I guess, of what we saw earlier in the war. There's been 3 months, you'd call it, Stuart, of more quiet. But now we see fighting in the north of the Gaza Strip. We see this preparation for a very large battle in the south of the Gaza Strip at Rafah. We see rockets coming into Israel from Gaza, including this morning. And we see a real intensity of fighting in the north of Israel. That is the south of Lebanon, the north of Israel, with Hezbollah on that border. And I just want to say that on that border, indeed, inside Israel, there are still tens of thousands of civilians who are not in their homes, dispossessed inside Israel, and tens of thousands, both in Gaza and in southern Lebanon, who are not in their homes either. So this is a very costly, very lengthy military operation for people on both sides.
Irris, thanks very much. Irris Makler, a correspondent, talking to us live there from Jerusalem.